So this is part 2 of how loading affects your selection of T-slot profile. In part 1, what we learned is for an axial load like this, the cross-sectional area is important in determining how much load the beam is able to take. And we learned for a bending load like this, not only the amount of material, but also the shape of the material determines how much bending load we're able to take. So that raises the question, how do we quantify how strong the shape of the material is from one T-slot profile to another? And that physical quantity is what's called a moment of inertia. There are a couple different types of moment of inertias that we typically use for T-slot profile. There's an IX and an IY, and if we just think of like you had your Cartesian coordinates in algebra, you have an x-axis and you have a y-axis, and your IX, moment of inertia about the x-axis, is bending about the x-axis, and IY rather is bending about the y-axis. And if you look at any T-slot profile catalog, you'll see those quantities listed beside each profile. So I have here a Kanye catalog. This is the system that A-Line uses, and we'll take a look at the different physical quantities between these two beams. So if I look here, this is the 50 by 50 heavy-duty extrusion, and I have an IX and an IY of about 29 centimeters to the fourth. Now my IX and my IY are the same because this is symmetric. It's the same about the x-axis as it is about the y-axis. So IX and IY are the same. Now if we look at it for the 40 by 80 profile, what we see is we have an IX of 64 centimeters to the fourth, and that's again bending about the x-axis, and our IY is 17 centimeters to the fourth. So there's a big difference between the IX and the IY, and you kind of intuitively know this because when I set up a beam, of course I'm much stronger in bending if my beam is set up this way than if my beam is set up that way, and we see that reflected in those two values for the moment of inertia. Now what's interesting about this is, let's look at this 40 by 80 while we're talking about it. My cross-sectional area of my 40 by 80 is about 10 square centimeters. All right? And if I look at my cross-sectional area for my heavy-duty 50 millimeter, that cross-sectional area is about 11 square centimeters. So I actually have more material in this profile than I do in this profile. Yet, as what we saw, the moment of inertia is quite a bit different. For this one, what we saw is my IX is about 29, and for this one, it's almost 70. So this beam, this profile, is more than twice as stiff in bending as this profile, even though it has less material. And in fact, this is going to be lighter, and it's going to cost less, but it's going to be a better beam. This catches a lot of customers by surprise when they'll call and they'll say, you know, I have a heavy load, and so I just want to go with the heavy-duty extrusion. And I'll look at what their loading is, and if their loading has a lot of bending, I say, you know, you're actually better off, instead of paying for the extra material like this, pay to get the right shape, because this is a lighter beam, and it's actually going to be a lot stiffer in bending than this one. Now, if you have a lot of axial load, say your vertical members and you have a lot of weight on them, then it makes sense to go with the heavy-duty extrusion because you're going to be able to carry more axial load. But for bending load, you're both lighter, cheaper, and stiffer going with the 40 by 80 in this particular instance. So now that you know that, when you look at any T-slot catalog and you understand what your loading type is, whether it's axial or whether it's bending, look at those IX and those IY values, and that's going to help you select what the right profile is, as opposed to just going with the heavy duty because you think you have a heavy load.